Welcome to the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC's December webinar. My name is Ryan Stewart, and I'm facilitating today's panel discussion. I'm speaking to you from the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island, and I'd like to start by acknowledging that I live, work, and play on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. Thanks for being here today. We're recording this webinar. We'll be sharing a recording with you later this week. Immediately following the webinar is a super short survey to help us do a better job with these and to cover make sure we're covering topics you're most interested in. Please stick around to take that. Today's webinar will begin with a short intro, followed by presentations by our three panelists. Then we'll spend the last portion with the question and answers. We'll wrap up by about 2:15. If you have any questions during the webinar, please pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Someone might answer them during the presentations. Otherwise, we'll try to pose them all after our panelists have finished talking. Today's webinar is part of a monthly series hosted by the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. The council's board and staff are a unified voice for more than 80 nonprofit organizations and 100,000 British Columbians. They're a diverse bunch, from anglers to dirt bikers, nature clubs, and rock climbers. Their different passions merge with a shared love of the outdoors and a reliance on volunteers, hence today's topic. I'm as curious as anyone to hear today's discussion. I'm on the board of a nonprofit and work with an advisory committee. I've volunteered on trail projects. I've seen firsthand the challenges of finding volunteers, engaging them, keeping them interested. I've also interviewed and talked to many leaders of clubs and associations that rely on volunteers. And I hear lots of stories about the struggles with recruiting, with getting enough manpower, with volunteer burnout. This is, I think, especially relevant in the outdoor recreation space, and especially since the pandemic. First, there was all those restrictions on gathering, which I think turned a lot of people off. Then, as many as you know, the inevitable workload of more people being outdoors often falls on volunteers. And now life is expensive and it's limiting some people's ability to participate, to be volunteers. These challenges are widespread. Volunteer Canada reported earlier this year that 65% of nonprofits are struggling with recruitment. At the same time, though, I've heard about mountain bike races that were so inundated with volunteers that they had to start turning people away. And I've heard of clubs that have really made it very successful at making volunteering part of their local culture. We have a couple clubs that have really active volunteer basis with us today, as well as a panelist who can provide more of an overview of the state of volunteering and best practices for attracting or training great volunteers. So first I'll introduce them. There's Dorothy Burker. She's the director of Volunteer BC, a director with Volunteer BC, sorry, and the communications and development manager with KMC Community Resources, which among other things helps nonprofits recruit volunteers. Caitlin Bissett is the provincial network coordinator with Nature Kids BC. Her organization does a great job of recruiting adult volunteers of all ages to work with kids on nature appreciation projects. And Adrian Bostock is the operations manager for the Shuswap Trail Alliance. The Alliance develops, maintains trails and recreation opportunities in a vast area of the interior of BC and has a diverse and dedicated team of volunteers. Thank you all for being here. And I'm just gonna stop sharing here. Okay. There we go. We're gonna start our panel discussion with Dorothy Burker. I'm hoping you can lead us off with an overview of the state of volunteering in BC and what the research can teach us about recruiting and empowering volunteers today. Thanks, Dorothy, for being here.
That's great. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me to be here. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity, and also just say that, yes, that I am only a director, not the director for Volunteer BC. And I actually work with KCR Community Resources, which is based in the central Okanagan. And so I'd like to just acknowledge also that I'm joining you from the traditional unceded and stolen territory of the Silks people. And part of my work is also making sure that when we're talking about volunteerism is that we always consider the land that we live on, the work that we're doing here, and how we also work with Indigenous people and all community members around, making sure we have an equity lens for the volunteerism. And that we work towards truth and reconciliation in our work as well. So I'd like to just start by I'm trying to now make sure that I've got my other screen up here. Sorry, so I can move the so just on our quick thing is overview is trends in volunteerism, recruitment, and then retention, and then again that equity lens, making sure that we are treating our program, our volunteers, which are at the heart of our mission-driven organizations, as humans that deserve our best efforts, that they deserve that we bring that equity lens and that we bring an inclusive and belonging sense to the spaces that we ask them to volunteer their time with. I just wanted to sort of say, yes, Ryan, you know, the Volunteer Canada has identified a 65% drop in volunteerism, and it's something that I think people are speaking a lot about, and it can be really frustrating. But I want to sort of challenge the view too of it. Sort of, is volunteerism in decline, or is it at a crossroads? And recognizing that you can look at it as that glass being half empty and that it's in decline, or you can really look at how your program is being run. What are you doing as a volunteer coordinator to make sure that you're meeting the needs of the world today? And if your program isn't there, then you're going to be in decline. But if your program is working towards really working with people, treating them fairly, treating them equitably, then you may be at a crossroads, and you're going to be on that side that's getting inundated with volunteers, because you have human beings that are working with your organization because they believe in the mission, they believe in the passion of the organization that you're working with, and they believe they're being treated fairly and equitably, and they feel like they're getting out of what they want out of that partnership as well. So just wanted to highlight, in the past, a lot of times volunteers, when they're asked, their number one reason for volunteering is always focused on contribution to the community or building their skills and experience. The third one has always been personally affected by cause. And that's where you see a lot of health and organizations like that drive that passion for it. But since the pandemic, a volunteer organization that we work with, Volunteer Calgary, did some surveys and studies, and they really found that volunteerism is changing. The motivation for why people are volunteering is changing. People want to be connected to a larger cause, and they want to make an impact. So when we're looking at volunteers and what we offer them as an opportunity, do we tell them the story of what they want to hear and how they can hear the story of what they want to be able to do? So do they understand that they're going to make an impact when they're building trails, or they're safeguarding nature areas? Do you share the impact, or do you just say, come and help us work, right? Those kinds of conversations are really important. And then building that sense of belonging, people feeling like they have a connection to the community that they live in, people have connection to a cause that they believe in, people feel like they belong, that they're not outsiders, that they're not being marginalized. And a lot of times when we look at volunteer programs, we've often only gone to sort of the usual suspects pool, as opposed to looking at more diverse communities and really finding the skills and the quality people in those communities and reaching out to them in a different way. So that's going to be my sort of approach to you, to encourage you to look at. Pre-pandemic, the volunteer demographics showed that the 18 to 24 group, which is the Zoomers, wasn't volunteering as much, but since then they have. And so that younger generation is really a key component of who is out there currently that's able and willing to volunteer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the age groups and the demographics of things. But what the survey that they did also showed was volunteer compassion. So volunteers feeling their hearts are engaged in the work that they're doing, that they are wanting to be making a difference because they feel people are impacted negatively and they want to help make that change. So refugees and settlement was something that showed early in after the Ukraine was invaded. In January, it wasn't on people's radar, and then after Ukraine was invaded, refugees and settlement became a huge issue for people to be concerned about and want to be able to support it. Social justice is something that people are very passionate about wanting to be engaged with, whether it's anti-racism, Black Lives Matter movements, residential schools, those kinds of things. And then, of course, huge is environment. And that's especially going to be interesting for the folks in this area, I think, in your group. Just the impact of environment and the importance of nature in our lives every day. So from a passion and interest standpoint, I think your organizations will be well versed to access people. A couple of things about recruitment, just as an age demographic. And again, I'm going to just qualify that when we look at demographics, these are stereotypes that we're building things on. They're not exclusive. They're not the only person. And so I just really want to say that they're only meant as a guide, not as a way to sort of acknowledge individuals that you run into and say, oh, you're a boomer. Must be your experience then. Still remember that the people that you work with individually are individual human beings and shouldn't be stereotyped. But here's the sort of figure, the picture that we've put together for baby boomers. They're kind of that stalwart volunteer, but they have been very much impacted by the pandemic. They're not wanting to be put at risk as much for their volunteer roles. They have been disengaged by some organizations because organizations couldn't meet their needs during the pandemic. And so they've either found new organizations or they've just stepped back a little bit. Recognizing the Gen X, that's my generation, despite my son wanting to tell me I'm a boomer. We're middle-aged. We're the sandwich generation. So we've got our elderly parents and we've got our younger children. And so our time window is pretty tight. So for us, finding opportunities that make us feel like we are giving back in a significant way, but with a shorter time window is going to fit that Generation X a little bit more. But Generation X is also really interested in family volunteering. And when I was thinking about the groups that you work with, I think this would be one that family volunteering, I think, would be a key key segment for you to consider looking at when you're looking for your organizations, because especially with the digital age, so many parents are concerned around digital use and lack of connection to nature. And so when you're able to engage families in groups like that, where parents feel like they're getting their teenagers or their younger kids off of devices and getting them connected to nature and making a serious impact that way, I think is a good connection for them, and it makes them feel like they want to be able to make time for your organizations. And Generation X is generally informal and they crave convenience. So just so you know. Generation Y. So I grew up in an area where Generation Y was always the young whippersnappers, but they are now creeping up on middle age. They're going to be the 30 to 45-year-olds that are in that zone of having young families. And so the demands on their time are pretty heavy. They're building a career, they're building their family. But again, because they're concerned about family, and I think that this is still going to be a key area for people to consider reaching out to, because you're able to connect them to a passion of theirs. And then the Gen Z, the Zoomers, they're the ones that are digitally so adept and so tuned into that. They're very diverse generation. So if you don't have an equity lens, they'll be quick to tell you about it. They'll be quick to tell you that they don't want to work for an organization that doesn't have an equity lens, and rightfully so, I'm going to say. And they're really passionate. They love to be engaged with their passions. So When you've got them engaged that way, they have the time, they have the ability, and they have the skills. They have mad skills they can bring to your organization. So I think it's really important that we consider accessing them. For recruitment strategies, I'm just going to highlight these really quickly. When you're looking at recruiting, think about the direct approach is always going to be your best approach. Asking somebody to volunteer is the most powerful way, because especially they feel like they're needed. Indirect is going to be things like posters and things, and that's a great way for letting people know about how about your organization or what you can do, but it's not as impactful as that direct ask. Being able to look at somebody and say, Brian, I really admire your skills in people, in engaging people, and that you're never afraid to ask. So I want to engage you with my organization. And especially when we're talking about an equity lens, make sure that you're never looking at somebody and saying, you're going to check my box for a diverse person on my board or a diverse person within my community. You really need to look at them as valuing the skills that they bring. So that's what you're doing. So if you're looking at somebody who maybe has some physical challenges, it's focusing on their abilities on computers or other things that you know about them, and engaging them to invite them to be part of your organization that way. So really, please don't tokenize people by saying you can fill this box for me and create a diverse organization. Delegated is when you ask somebody else, so another group, to be a part of your organization, and that can be for bigger pushes. Adrian, you had mentioned something like big trail building, bigger projects. That's when you're going to be maybe relying more on groups that come and they can gather their followers to come and say, we'll bring 20 people down to your organization. Those work for bigger, good events like that, but not necessarily the day-to-day doings of your organization. Personalized approach is when you're going and meeting people, or outreach is you're meeting people, you're making presentations at newcomer clubs, you're talking on the radio, you're making connections in the community, and sharing the mission and of your organization so that people get inspired by you. For the recruitment campaign, these are slides from another presentation that I did, but the biggest thing that you need to get from this slide is really a quote from a volunteer that was looked at. Why do you volunteer, and what they wanted to get out of it. And what they wanted out of it more than anything was, tell me specifically how I made a difference. How do I make a difference? Why me? What will I be doing? How do I make a difference? Because that's what's motivating people. And then retention strategies are the biggest things. Again, is really going to be listening to your volunteers and to your community, and really understanding what is it that needs to be done. What am I going to get accomplished? Is my time well spent? And can I provide value? Those are the kinds of things that volunteers are looking for. Establish why volunteers want their volunteers. Why do I need to be there? Why do I need to come and share my Sunday with your time? And be ready to say the impact that you have, or the fact that you can't do it without volunteers, because most of us can't run our organizations without those volunteers. And then so retention strategies, the overarching sort of strategy is always make sure that you orientate your volunteers well, do a proper orientation with them, that you're supervising them, that it's not just, now that we have you, we never need to talk to you again. Make sure you're keeping the connection relevant with them. Make sure they're doing the job properly, and make sure that you're able to help redirect them if there are differences in what you want them to do and what they're doing. Recognition, the most one is really truly a thank you, and being able to know what the volunteer is doing, and then recognize why the volunteer is at your organization, and try to meet those needs. So for some people, it's about connection. That's not somebody to make sure that they're working on their own. They're somebody that you make sure you put in with a pool of people and have them get connected to the community. If a volunteer is somebody that's more of an introvert, don't throw them at your frontline experience and make them do that. And even when you think about Like I think about, again, Adrian, building trails and things. You know, you might think you're looking for the most able-bodied volunteers to do that, but don't disregard the opportunity for people who are less able-bodied to really make a significant difference in either helping you recruit volunteers, in office operations, in being on site to make sure people are looked after, and recognizing that people have value outside of a specific skill that you may be looking for, that they bring their own value and skills is really important as part of your program. So the biggest retention strategies are really, and I'll just go down these here, is meeting the needs of the volunteers. As I've said, creating that positive culture. When people feel like they belong, it's hard to get them to leave, and they will work hard for your organization. Make sure that you are finding the right mix for the person that's volunteering for you, and be open to feedback. So if somebody says this role isn't for me, don't take it as that they're not interested in this organization, but really listen to them, because they're the best ones to tell you what they really want and need out of the volunteer opportunity, and make a change if it's possible. And if it's not possible, then part ways and say, this is not the right organization, and let it be that. Because I'm a big believer in, don't just have warm bodies that are your volunteers, have volunteers that are actively engaged and wanting to make a difference with your organizations. Those are going to be able to do the best work. That diversity is important. Set them up for success. Tell them what's expected to them. Give them a job description. Tell them this is the parameter of your work. Tell them who are they going to be working with? Who are they reporting to? How are they interacting with people? Those are all really important things that it would be like any job that you offer anybody in a work environment. Volunteers have the same right to those kind of expectations for understanding what they need to be doing. And then recognize too that they are volunteers, and flexibility is going to be important for them. Your volunteers are also your customers. Work the pace, make sure that you don't go, oh my gosh, you're the best volunteer ever, I'm going to make you do everything I've ever wanted to get done, because then they're just going to get burnt out. So pace those awesome volunteers and make sure you engage them enough, but not so much that they feel like the load has become too heavy. And then be a good manager for them and recognize them for the skills that they bring. And again, I'm just going to say this as an important thing, is the frames of reference. Check how you look at volunteers, check at how you see the world and how you frame things, how you share things in your community. If you're doing a recruitment and asking for volunteers, are you being very dominant culture centric, shall we say? You know, are you really focusing on the way it's always been done, as opposed to really trying to reach out to new generations or new people, and people from diverse cultures and diverse abilities are amazing volunteers. Check your biases. That's a really important thing. Be aware of them. It's not that you don't have any. We all have biases, but the only way we can counteract them is really by being aware of them and then putting things in place to mitigate them. And then remove barriers. Think about it from the perspective of somebody who has barriers, who faces them, and think about dismantling those barriers before they come and experience them, so that it's a seamless connection with your organization. And the sense of inclusion and belonging is key and critical for all of it. So that's me, and I'll just say thank you and turn the mic over to somebody else, but I'm happy to answer questions when it comes to the question and answer time.
Great. Thank you very much, Dorothy. Really appreciate it. I want to apologize. I think I had a bit of a sharing malfunction failure at the beginning there. So if my screen and if you had to stare at my ugly inbox there from my email, I apologize. Let's hand the microphone over to Caitlin Bissett from the Nature Kids BC. Caitlin, you have a lot of experience running volunteer programs, volunteer programs for the sought after 18 to 34 demographic that Dorothy just mentioned. Can you tell us about some of the ways that you found success recruiting and engaging those young adults?
Thanks, Ryan. And yeah, thanks, Dorothy, for that excellent presentation. I'm just going to share my screen here to start. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Great. Thanks. Yeah, so I'm from Nature Kids BC, and I'm really excited to talk about engaging and inspiring youth volunteers for 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm the provincial network coordinator with Nature Kids BC. So I'm kind of frontline with working with our volunteers and mentoring them and really building connections. But before I get into some tips, just who we are as an organization. We're a nonprofit that is dedicated to providing nature experiences for families with children ages 5 to 12. And we're different from other like family-centered, kid-centered organizations because we're not a drop-off program. So we actually have volunteers that run community clubs, and the kids come, but their parents or guardians come as well, and they get to experience nature together. So it's a really powerful way to have these great nature-based intergenerational knowledge sharing days outside in nature. And our organization has over 100 volunteers in many different roles from all different generations and walks of life. And then we do have 7 staff members, but most of us are part-time. So we're a grassroots nonprofit that really is supported and driven by our fabulous volunteers. So today I wanted to focus on 3 themes that I focus on in my daily work. And I gave it a nature edge because I'm sure most of us here are all nature lovers like myself. So I want to talk about recruitment and visualizing, kind of planting the seeds of volunteerism and then mentoring those seeds to grow into these little seedlings, and then creating connection to grow these seedlings into, you know, beautiful trees that have roots within our organization. So just wanted to kind of paint that picture for you today. So delving into recruitment, asking ourselves, like, who are we recruiting? In this sense, what I'm talking about today is the 18 to 30 age range, asking, you know, why would they want to volunteer with us? You know, what's their purpose? Dorothy also touched on this. So for myself, when I'm speaking to a potential volunteer, I'll ask them, like, why do you want to volunteer? And then that guides me with you know, options I can present to them about our organization to see if it fits what they're looking for. Because if they come to us and we don't find out the why, and then they start volunteering and it doesn't actually suit their passions, then very quickly, often they will just either leave the organization or they may not feel empowered. So that's a really important first step, is asking, you know, why are they wanting to help you out, and what drives their passion. And with this age range of 18 to 30, there have been a lot of studies done, you know, of why they're volunteering and what they're looking for. And this is where that change is coming into play. Is you know, in the past in volunteerism, we've had people taking these leadership roles and having the time to do so. But with this age range, statistically, they're seeing that the youth want volunteer positions that bring them joy and really are kind of like a respite position for them. So this age group, they're very cognizant of their mental health. There's also, we've got cost of living coming into play now. A lot of them are going to university plus working 2 jobs. So they're not looking for a heavy leadership position. They're really looking for a way to, you know, have that community and get out and enjoy themselves. And in previous jobs where I've worked with 18 to 30, oftentimes I would tell the youth, you know, take a break from your studying and let's get outside. So, you know, with your organization, you know, outdoor recreation, you could use that, right, as a way for them to come outside and connect. And really, you know, take a break from their daily stressors that they may be having. Moving on to the where. So where do you recruit youth? Probably not a newspaper. 18 to 30s aren't in that. So, you know, same thing like Facebook, they're usually on Instagram. So really think about what you're using, you know, TikTok, right? Like you have to really move with the areas that they're following. Universities are great. So just really making sure that the tools you're using for recruitment are the tools that this age range will actually see in their day-to-day life. And then what will they do within your organization? So if a person comes to you and you're like, hey, volunteer with us, I'm like, well, what do I do? And you're like, if you don't have a clear definition, they're not going to know how that fits into their life. And again, some people love a flexible position. Others want to know what day of the week, how many hours, and that way, be really honest about the commitment that this position in your organization requires. So you're not, setting yourself and the volunteer up to not be successful. And then how will you manage volunteers? So this is a big one because a lot of nonprofits don't have big staff bases due to funding. So it's really important if you have a plan to take on volunteers, but you don't have the staff to support them, then how will you have room to mentorship and build these connections? So really having a firm understanding of your staff structure and your support, and making sure that the staff you have in volunteer coordination really have those personable skills, and that are really, interested in building these connections is really important. So after you've gone through, planting the seeds of your recruitment and you've got a really group of engaged volunteers, moving on to mentorship. So I've got a few little clouds here representing ideas. First one being onboarding. So for me, onboarding, of course, there's screening, there's training. So really making sure you've got a great screening process to make sure your volunteers know exactly what they'll be doing within your organization, making sure that they understand your vision, and then offering all those supports and trainings for the roles that they want to take on. Then moving into empowerment. So empowerment is ongoing in mentorship. So, get to know the volunteer, get to know their strengths, what are they wanting to learn, and really support them in this. And always be there for your volunteers. So with my volunteer team, they're always like, oh, Caitlin, I send you way too many questions. I'm like, no, send me every single question you have. I'm so happy that you're talking to me and you're engaging. And I constantly remind them, like, I want you to send me like tons of emails. Like, this is what this is about. And that's what I'm here for. So even though they know that's my role, I do have to, remind them that I'm here to support you and empower you and get you the tools that you need to be successful. Because again, in Nature Kids, we have 25 clubs across the province. So I'm working on a virtual basis with these volunteers. Some I've never met in person. So I have to be really, aware of the tools they may need in their communities to support them, because it's not a typical organization where that volunteer is coming into the office and I get to see them face to face, which may be the case for, some of the clubs in here as well. And then training, the training bubble is not meant as us training them. It's what professional development are you providing? So thinking about the 18 to 30, they're either entering university or entering the workforce, they're studying, or maybe they're, young environmental professionals. So they're looking to skill build. So do you have funding to offer professional development, even as simple as covering first aid training? Are you looking for grants that offer this for your volunteers? So really giving back to them. And this really falls into retention. So like Nature Kids, we're doing like a mushroom training webinar in January, and our volunteers are so excited because of course we're all like, really interested in nature and what we can learn. So, and asking them like, what kind of training do you want? Not assuming, again, Dorothy mentioned the bias piece, not assuming that what your volunteers want. Actually ask them, multiple times throughout your year when you're structuring training. And then also with youth, feeds into training and empowerment is, I've had youth come in and say, I ask, well, why are you volunteering? And they say, oh, I just need somebody on my resume. And I go, okay, but can I chat to you about what the difference that you're making? And at this time we were working on I was doing weed pulling, and I got them to look at the space and say, okay, but how could your work actually impact this space on a stewardship land? And she kind of stopped and looked around. And then she ended up taking on a whole stewardship project in that one park. So with youth, really, like they've thinking about sometimes they're just volunteering because they feel like they're checking a box, but then really empowering them to understand the difference they're making within your organization and get them to see the bigger picture is also really important. So this mentorship is always ongoing. It never stops. It's all about building connections, which leads me to my next tip. So you could call this retention, but I like the word connection a lot better because it really all comes together. So how do we ensure that volunteers are connected to our community? And then if you're a virtual organization, how are they connected to their own home base and community? So with youth, there are startling numbers that due to the pandemic, they no longer feel a connection to their space and their community, which to me is really sad and frightening. So it's really important that we're doing this work, with youth to get them connected back into their space. So really thinking about how within your organization can you, build relationships, build friendships, have them feel connected to organizations. So on an organizational basis, even just, share your strategic plan, share your goals. To you might go, well, they don't want to know that. Well, a lot of volunteers will actually feel empowered and actually feel important if you include them in these discussions. So we had a great gathering on Vancouver Island with a few of our volunteers, and we shared, our strategic plan and our direction and the passion. And all of a sudden you see the volunteers really feel like fired up and excited because they see themselves in this big picture of the organization. So it can be as simple as just sharing more about your organization and including them in planning processes, giving them a seat at that table. Then they feel empowered and they feel included. And then they feel like their voice and their opinion matters as well. And then, creating community by connecting other volunteers to new volunteers. Maybe it's a social event. We do virtual meetings with our volunteers because we're on a provincial basis. So anything you can do to connect them, even to other organizations. So oftentimes there's a fear, oh, well, if I connect them to another organization, will they leave us and go volunteer for them? Often volunteer world, that can happen. So don't have that fear. Like together we can come together and be stronger and help multiple organizations at the same time. So really just creating that community, and then they'll have supports from other organizations if you yourself actually can't be in that community, which is really, really important. So I shared a lot. I've got lots of tips. Again, really excited to be here and look forward to questions at the end. So thanks so much, Ryan, for the opportunity. And I just wanted to end by just sharing a quote from one of our club leaders. So Alyssa says, "I love volunteering as a way to connect to the community and give back. I benefited from many volunteer-led programs when I was younger, and it's really fulfilling to pass it on." So again, this is her passion. This is her reason for volunteering. So also, capturing those moments and those ideas from your volunteers and include that in your work. Also, if you can capture quotes from people who benefit from your organization's services and share those with your volunteers. I find even though we're a nonprofit, we're volunteer driven, some people who will come and use our services still don't understand that it's mostly volunteer run. So the fact that we can, get this feedback and share with our volunteers, it really empowers them and sees, again, the difference that they're making, but in a different lens. So thank you. And I just put my contact information at the bottom if anybody wants to reach out.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. That was really excellent. Lots of great information there. Adrian, let's turn to you now. And have you wrap up the panel discussion. Where's the Shuswap Trail Alliance finding success with recruiting volunteers?
Thanks, Ryan. Can you see my screen there? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. So thanks everybody. My presentation seems it's going to be a lot more operationally oriented than the other two. Just that's my role in the world. So we'll go from there. Hello, my name is Adrian Bostock. I work for the Shuswap Trail Alliance as the operations manager, and I am in unceded Secwepemc territory in downtown Salmon Arm. I'll be discussing the Shuswap Trail Alliance's effort to create and maintain a volunteer base through collaboration while working towards creating and maintaining purpose-built, sanctioned, and sustainable trails in the Shuswap region. I'll be discussing retaining and engaging volunteers with a focus on initiatives designed to involve younger individuals. And we'll be exploring, engagement, not just, I've lost myself. I'll be exploring and discussing attracting, retaining, and engaging volunteers with a focus on younger individuals. Sorry. Yeah, so volunteer engagement is not just about completing tasks, it's about building community, fostering sustainability, and promoting an active lifestyle. So the Shuswap Trail Alliance our vision is encapsulated in 4 pillars: well-designed, well-signed, well-maintained, and well-promoted trails. Success to us is embodied in people living actively, enjoying nature, and in demonstrating a commitment to sustainability. So I'm going to use 5 different initiatives we have as case studies in my presentation here. These are the South Canoe Trail Day that we have, the Jackson Mountain Bike Academy that we work with closely, Rubberhead Trail Nights, our winter grooming program, which is fairly new to us, and a small group that we call the Pilliators. So the South Canoe Trail Days, this traditionally has been a very large spring cleanup day for the South Canoe Trail Network. Historically, it's seen between 50 and 80 participants. This day can take up to 40 staff hours to plan and set up. And we are endeavoring to change this up a bit going forward. We want to break it up into 6 smaller days, mostly due to recent climate trends, resulting in an earlier start to the non-winter season with drier, hotter springs that can make things like tread repair very difficult. And we're hoping to build in some flexibility into this program to allow volunteers to come out when tasks are needed, as opposed to having this preset one day. And we're also hoping to give more people more opportunity to show up to the volunteer days. So the one day was obviously just a set day in the spring, so you could either make it or you couldn't. It did have a lot of success, but it also had some challenges with that format. And then the Jackson Mountain Bike Academy. This is an academy program through the school district. And it focuses on, there's a community engagement development component to it. Priority in this program is given to grade 10 students. Historically, they have come out for 2 to 3 trail days per season. And some of the students from this program have gone on to work with us at the Shuswap Trail Alliance on our trail crew. So it has seen some great successes. But at the same time, we are looking to diversify the kids that can participate in these days. So we've decided to break this again into 8 smaller days, still working with the Shuswap or with the Jackson Mountain Bike Academy, but giving opportunity for other youth within the school district to participate in these days. So we'll be doing smaller days with 5 kids per day. And we're working with the school district to initiate this. And again, it'll give us some flexibility on the tasks we can tackle. Because as you can imagine, having 20 plus students at a time on any one project of grade 10s can be a handful for a full day just to keep them engaged. And there's some real challenges getting school kids in a school bus to trail projects. So just solving that transportation issue has been a real head scratcher for us over the last few years, and we're attempting to this new format of smaller days and hopefully encouraging more kids to join. So the Rubberhead Trail Nights. So this is a weekly session that I personally lead on one of our trail networks. It is technically through the bike club, which is separate from the Trail Association. And this has seen about 6 or so core members that show up every Monday. We run it from, it's like 2 hours from 8 till 6 every Monday evening. We end up putting in about 100 to 150 hours a year through this program. We focus strictly on maintenance, which frees up a lot of the bike club funds to do other things, builds, and stuff. So And we have partnership with the Shuswap Trail Alliance to use tools and help for planning support. This has been a pretty successful program for the small scale that it is. So another case study for this one, and this one's really new in the Shuswap, is the Shuswap Cycling Club has started a winter grooming program at South Canoe. It's a bit of a collaboration because if you understand how approvals and stuff work in BC, the Shuswap Trail Alliance has the partnership agreement to manage the South Canoe trails. The Shuswap Cycling Club went ahead and purchased a bunch of equipment and provide all the labor to do this winter grooming. So we hold the approvals as the Shuswap Trail Alliance. The Cycling Club provides equipment and labor, and then we do some oversight and some help with them. Their early days of this program saw some real challenges just trying to keep the volunteers coloring between the lines on what their approval allowed them to do and learning the ropes of what their machinery could do. Working through those hurdles, though, this has become a very huge program within the community. It's created this amazing 4-season amenity out of one of our trail networks. And yeah, it's super successful. This crew puts in 150 plus hours a year. And they've gotten to a point now where they're largely hands off. I still do work with them, but they've already been out grooming this year with very little snow. And yeah, the community really appreciates this one. And this was brought to us as their initiative, and we work with them. And the sort of final example I'm going to use here is a group we call the Pilliators. And we have a few of these groups in town, but this one is one of the more organized ones. So this is a group of residents that focus on a specific municipal park. They operate under the Shuswap Trail Alliance's insurance to have municipal permission to operate in this park. They don't require much from us. They do pretty light trail work, post installs, lopping, but it's a massive community engagement piece for them. So there's a little bit of wrangling here, but this is really a self-run group that just needed a little bit of assistance from us in order to meet the requirements of the municipality. And they've been going a long time. So, through all these different initiatives, and I mean, they're all quite different. The challenges, and I mean, these were pointed out in the other presentations as well, it's just time and resources from staff to educate and organize and get approvals going is pretty big. Finding that staff time to resource these groups. Developing a risk management plan that can be transferable and scalable to all of these groups. And within that lens, we're looking at things like, do you have your approvals in place? Do you have a plan that makes sense? Are you building to provincial standards? All of that stuff falls into that risk management lens, and developing a program that's scalable is pretty big. Volunteer education, which has been touched on. This is something we focus on as much as we can afford to, but things like doing trail days, trail workshop days, chainsaw training. We do some invasive species training and stuff like that. This is costly and time consuming, but it pays dividends if you do it correctly. And a big one for me is just matching the interests of the volunteers to the activities that they're engaging in. And this can look like anything from ensuring that you're setting up projects that people are interested in doing, and that will help people show up. Or conversely, when somebody comes to you with an idea that they want to actuate, not being the stick in the mud, letting that initiative grow, knowing that there are going to be hurdles, and you're going to have to spend some time making sure they're all coloring between the lines. But often those things pay dividends if you work through those processes with the people coming to you. And then the administration piece of all of this is always a challenge. Tracking hours, getting approvals, getting waivers signed, communicating with your volunteers, all of that stuff just takes time. We find it's hard to get volunteers to do that work. The other people on this call may have some thoughts on that, but I find that's where my staff time is most useful. And then letting the volunteers do what they think is the fun work, which is the actual building trail work. And then sort of the end of this is, you can't simply gauge impact through hours. Things like the winter grooming program, where they put in, 150 hours a winter, but they have truly created this 4-season amenity for the community with that input. Or the Rubberhead Trail Nights, which, we put in 100 to 150 hours a year, but it has freed up so much resources from the cycling club that they don't have to focus on maintenance as much. They can focus on other pieces of trail maintenance within there. Yeah, so that's my presentation. I'm happy to ask questions as we roll into that, and I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks a lot, Adrian. So yeah, that wraps up our panel discussion portion. We'll move on to the Q&A. If you have any questions, reminder, you can just pop them in the chat box there. We have a few already, but I'll start off maybe with you, Dorothy. What resources are available to help nonprofits find volunteers or improve their volunteer recruitment strategies and things like that? Or is there stuff out there that can help people?
Yeah, for sure, Ryan. And can I just, before I forget, I just want to, because I was thinking about, love what Caitlin and Adrian were sharing as well. And I just wanted to mention as well with, I used an example of somebody with diverse abilities or who may be not able to build a trail. And it made me think about the fact that actually I'm making assumptions there, because you don't actually know the tools that somebody has or the ability that somebody has. And I think about specifically about somebody who may be physically challenged in some ways, but still very physically capable in other ways. And so just not to judge that. And also when we think about participants or volunteers, like volunteers that are blind, they have amazing tools that they have access to that we don't necessarily know about, but that they know about, that they allows them to do things and make them very capable in those roles. So I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't want it to seem that I was minimizing or pushing somebody to only be able to do one type of volunteer work with it. To go back to your question, there are things like we use a volunteerconnector.org. That's a platform that Volunteer Calgary makes available. It's a great resource for trying to let people know about volunteer opportunities. And so you can just register. The way they've set it up is very volunteer centric. So it makes it super easy for a volunteer to go into that platform, and they can put in whether they want to be a virtual volunteer, they can put in their passions, they can put in how close they want a volunteer position to them. So it's throughout BC, it can be used. And so that's really great. There are other ones as well, but that is my favorite. So I'll just mention that one. And Volunteer Canada does have resources, and Volunteer BC has resources on our website as well for helping you with recruitment and retention. I think the things that Caitlin talked about when, and even changing the word retention to connection is really key. It's the mentorship, it's the relationship you're building with your volunteers that are going to do that. And your volunteers, when they've had a great experience, will tell other volunteers and allow them, because there's nothing that will travel faster in your community than a bad volunteer experience. So, yeah. I think that's
All right.
Unless somebody else might have something else to share.
Yeah, Caitlin, Adrian, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I use Volunteer Connector. which is great. And also Volunteer BC, we've got our postings on there. And then I also, because we're province-wide, I've got memberships with multiple community-based volunteer organizations as well for advertising volunteer positions. So yeah, visibility is key if you're a small organization, but very broad reaching to kind of get your organization's face out there for recruitment.
And Caitlin, before you go, someone was asking earlier that you mentioned grants for training volunteers. Are there some that you can kind of mention, or some that we could maybe find out about later and include with the pack we sent out? So
for sure. I don't have any like specific like grants that are open right now, but like we're working on a federal grant right now for COVID recovery. So that grant was specific to, you know, providing training for staff and volunteers. So looking for grants like that, or like if you're applying for a grant, you know, maybe it's a project for trail building, you know, maybe add, you know, lines in there for training for your volunteers. So build it into existing projects. There's lots of like small community grants as well. And right now there's also for the 18 to 30 age bracket, there are lots of different environmental organizations across Canada that are offering small grants that they can apply for different community projects. So just really being creative in the grant writing space and just, you know, seeing if there's any way that you can involve professional development training in your existing projects that are already happening to support your volunteers.
nice. So I know that a lot of people have challenges getting people to, say, move from being a member of a club to being on the board, or to put in more time to actually come out for events. Does anyone have tips on how they sort of move those people along through those stages of engaging and taking part? No? Yeah, go ahead, Dorothy.
Well, I'm just going to tie it into the question that Rachel has put in the comments as well about volunteer burnout. And just because we do tend to do that. We find a really amazing volunteer and then we give them everything that we need to do. Or in a smaller community, as she's mentioned, she's on several committees and things. And it's so important that we honor where people are at and identifying that, yes, we want to be able to give them enough that they feel engaged and empowered to do things with our organization. We don't want to give them so much that, you know, they get a sinking feeling in their stomach when they see the phone number calling them. So I think it's really important that you're able to identify the need and the expectations for people. So if you're asking them to do something else, be really clear about what is that something else going to look like so that they can commit to it wholeheartedly and know if they're able to commit, because volunteers love success. They don't like to feel like they are not doing their best or achieving their best for the organization. So if you've given them too big a load or too much responsibility, it disengages them. So finding that balance, I think, is important, and being really honest and saying, what can you give? But again, I really caution against, we just need somebody to fill the space, because that will quickly become a toxic environment or an environment where people are just calling it in, and that's not what you want. You want to have people feel like, I show up for this because it's important and I make a difference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think for me on the trail building end, I've had success with giving people say or input into projects and making sure that my Monday night specifically, that they don't drag on for hours and hours and hours. I really try to keep the time frame 6 to 8. You know, we're walking out at 8 and people just keep coming back because they know it's like not this big chunk out of their week. It's just kind of a social fun night for us to go out and swing tools in the woods. Seems to be working for me, though granted I don't have a large number of people that show up. It's sort of just the same faces every week, but they keep coming back.
And any tips for that up kind of moving them up through the organization, getting them onto the board, anything like that you guys can share?
I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Adrian.
No, please go on.
I'll just be really quick. It's really just about engagement and letting them know about the impact that you're trying to make with the organization, and where their specific help will be
Yeah.
needed and will be used.
Mhm.
Because when people understand that, then they will say yes to it, or they'll say no, because that's not where their skill set is. But they may know somebody in the community that would be the great fit. So being honest about what you need and that skill set, and engagement, letting people know their impact not only keeps them there and keeps them connected, but really allows them to see more possibilities. As Adrian said too, about empowering people, and Caitlin mentioned this as well, empowering people to understand their decisions can help grow the programs, and that we're not too directive in it, that we don't direct everything in how we do it. We let our volunteers' voices be heard.
Nice. Yeah, that personalized element, like make them feel like that, the human, and that you value those specific skills. Yeah. We've had a couple questions about resources for communicating and managing volunteers. Are there any, any software, any tools out there that you guys can share that you find helpful? Maybe Caitlin, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually changed softwares this year. So it's a great question for myself. We switched over to Keela, which is a nonprofit like CRM software. So it's basically, it's allowing us to use AI, but not using AI to lose the personal connection. So it's just allowing us to organize our membership data and our volunteer data in a very intuitive way. And for me, it's cut down on admin time. So before, when I had a volunteer application come in, it would come in through Google Forms, and then I would have to take that information and transfer it over into a different database. Whereas now the volunteer form is through Keela, and it intuitively transfers it over. And then if they apply for a membership, it connects the accounts. And then I can create communication tags, which filters into segments, which then sends out to different people in our newsletter. So yeah, definitely software is great. It definitely will take up Keela. It's Keela. And yeah, they started out in Vancouver. So it's a real cool, like BC based company. So we've been working with Keela for a few months now. And it's also like a donation software as well. So lots of different integrations that we're experiencing with that.
What about you, Adrian? What are you using to kind of keep engaged with those volunteer groups that you work with?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it really depends on where. Like, we're so geographically spread out. Like, some things are really easy. I just email the people that keep showing up. I have a list. Initiating, like starting new initiatives, like we're always trying to work with smaller communities, and getting the word out in those smaller communities has proven a challenge for us. And we haven't solved it, so I can't tell you. I think my gut feeling is just consistency of engagement is. Oh, my ED just sent me a text here saying custom database and donations through Canada Helps, which we use for donations and such, and charitable donations. But yeah, my gut is just consistency, like just keep showing up in those small communities and find those connections. And I really think the personable route is the way to go. We've noticed a vast drop off in the number of people that are engaging with social media with us and throughout our communities. So we're constantly going back to the old school of just like talking to people on the street and putting up posters and like doing all the things, because yeah, but I haven't solved it. So if anybody has any tips, we're looking for them for sure.
Nice. I had a question on the tip of my tongue. I just lost it. So, if you're looking for groups that are looking for people with very specific skills, I mean, is it better to go through that sort of finding those training avenues, or have you had any success with sort of recruiting, say, someone that's got web development or maintenance kind of skills, like putting those specific asks out there? Caitlin, is that something you've had much success with, or have any strategy suggestions for?
What I've been finding is like most of our asks are for club leaders. And then we have a new role of club ambassador, but I've had volunteers reach out and they're like, oh, but I have no knowledge about nature. Like I'm a newcomer. I'm like, that's fine. We'll find you nature mentors to run activities. We'll train you. And like we've had people join us with, you know, graphic design. So I'm getting a lot of volunteers that like they don't work in the environmental industry. They just are interested in nature and have a passion and want to grow that. And of course we say yes. So yeah, I really feel like don't just, you know, be sharing your information with people who are already environmentally minded, like really appeal to a broader audience because yeah, you'll probably be surprised at the different skills that come into your organization and how it really benefits. And then again, your diversity will just naturally grow. So we, like I've always said, like we've had organizations ask us, well, like, you know, how's your organization, working in the EDI area. And I always say, well, you can take a course on it, which most of us have done. But I says, if your staff aren't, living the values of EDI, then no matter what training you take, your organization won't meet the standard of what people are looking for. So it's really important to live that culture, equity, diversity, inclusion. And if you are, you should see it in the people that you are organically attracting to your organization. So if you aren't, then maybe ask yourself, real like deep look at your organization and look at your programs and maybe see, what's going on.
Dorothy, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, thanks for that. Because I was just going to speak up. I really agree with Caitlin on that. And I was reading the questions in the question and answer to where somebody mentioned about reducing hesitation and intimidation among prospective volunteers. Having an inclusive, belonging environment is like, it is so crucial. It's not something to be played at all. And so if you have volunteers that aren't willing to come alongside you on that culture, if your organization currently isn't living that culture, then you need to be okay with letting some volunteers go, because you will do more harm for your volunteer programs if you don't make this an important part of your how you develop your volunteer program. It is really important for the health of your organization, for the future of your organization, and for the people, obviously, as well. So I think it's really important that way. I think the other thing, sorry, go ahead. I'd forgotten what I was going to say.
Well, let me know if you remember. I did that a minute ago. I've remembered my question now, though. So I wanted to ask Adrian, and this is something, Caitlin, you mentioned as well, but Adrian, I know you work with lots of different partner groups out there. I mean, can you talk about, like, Caitlin, you mentioned, not to be afraid of that they're going to steal your volunteers. I mean, are there also synergies there? Do you often find that by working that way, you're sort of expanding your scope?
I mean, we work in the outdoor space, so I think it's like specifically around trail maintenance and stuff. So I think that there's a lot of just natural collaboration that happens. Like we work with equestrians and motorized users and such a wide variety of people, and then we try to wrangle in government and municipalities and stuff. So there's no risk for us losing volunteers, because like say you're volunteering for the STA and then you decide, oh, I want to go work with the equestrian riders more. I don't care. Like fill your boots. It's the same outcome, right? Like you've just kind of found your niche within the broader spectrum of what we're doing. So I don't know if it, yeah.
And Caitlin, did you have something to add to that?
I found like Nature Kids, we're always looking for new connections with organizations, because a lot of our our club leaders run the events, but we often have nature mentors or other organizations come in and actually like offer the nature activity to the clubs. So for example, I just had a new volunteer join us that I'm onboarding, and she heard of us through one of these other groups. And she's also volunteering for their organization. So it was really cool to see like those connections like come into play, and like we're supporting other organizations, they're supporting us. And because of us, we have this nature community that continues to build. Yeah, I think it's a great way to build community, and yeah, like just to not have that fear that if you are sharing out other opportunities, your volunteer, that they may leave, just to change it and know that you're building community instead.
Yeah, I think actually on the same sort of topic, the bigger challenge is making sure you're communicating with all those other partners and seeing where you can share resources and help each other out.
Definitely.
That seems to be where we get the most success with that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think even outside of sort of social sector or environment and nature and things, it's collaborative models are far more successful now than scarcity model ideas, right? The scarcity idea of, oh, I can't share grant information or I can't share volunteer information keeps us in a place of fear, as opposed to what's the opportunity if we work together? And there's so much more opportunity when we work together. And it'll be okay to say, this time I can't lead, this time you lead. And sharing that together, I think is far more successful. And your volunteers will appreciate it because it's part of that inclusive culture that you're building.
Yeah, I mean, regionally, when it comes to grants and grant writing and stuff, we'll often have several grants from different organizations into the same grant stream. And if only one of those organizations gets the grant, then for the region, that's a win. And that's how we try to view it, right? It's not like a competition. It's just like, we'll all try to work together. So yeah, I totally agree on that.
And I was just going to mention, somebody had asked in the comments as well about joining a group. And I do highly recommend it. I'm not sure in which area they are in, but there are throughout BC volunteer centers that may be leading sessions. Like we run a session called Nourishing Volunteer Managers, where we invite, and anybody here would be invited to come along as well, because we do it hybrid. So we are in person, and then we also offer a Zoom opportunity. And it's just for people who are doing the same job, are able to come and do some professional connecting, share ideas, just be able to share if something isn't going right, but be able to decompress and connect that way. So I'll maybe put it in the comments for our website, and then they can look on there. But in different areas throughout BC, there are volunteer centers that, it's kcr.ca, that offer those kinds of connections. And it's really important because it's not an easy job. You have to be so many people to so many individuals. Like you have so many hats as a volunteer manager that you have to wear. So having a place that you can debrief is really important. And yeah.
Nice. All right, so we're getting close to our time here. So I'll just throw you guys one last question. Let's keep them a little short. And so just maybe one final thought on what your best piece of advice is for any nonprofit group that's, maybe struggling to recruit or struggling to retain volunteers. So Dorothy, why don't you go first?
I'm just going to go with my old, do not fill a warm body, because that's going to lead how you do it. So recruit people with a passion to make a difference in your community, and they will be great volunteers, and they'll be happier doing that.
Caitlin?
Yeah, I would say first think about the why. Why are you struggling? So don't just assume it's that you're not finding people. Is it something within your organization that needs to change? And just to link in, Rachel had a comment about addressing volunteer burnout, and that is something that's very timely right now. So maybe you need to shift your volunteer roles, and maybe that is something you need to look at. So just really looking at the why you may be struggling, and not just assuming it's a simple reason why it's happening. Look at deeper into organization.
All right, and Adrian?
I think you just need to meet your volunteers where they're at and provide opportunities that they're interested in. I mean, I work in a very specific space, but that's
Yeah.
kind of where I find the success.
Find their passion and
Yeah.
provided something that meets that.
Yeah, teenagers want to build jumps. Just let them build jumps.
All right. Great. So we are at the end there of our presentation. Thanks you all for joining us. Remember, we will send a recording of this webinar later this week, and it'll include the email will include a bunch of links and things like that that we've just discussed to all these different resources. So don't worry if you didn't catch them all. We'll try and provide as much information as we can. And don't forget, there's a short survey coming up right after we end this webinar. This webinar is part of a monthly series. The next one in January, the topic will be about reconciliation. We're going to gather a panel of First Nation and Indigenous representatives to tell us how they'd like recreation groups to behave on unceded lands and how we can better work with First Nations groups. I think it'll be a really interesting discussion. The best way to stay informed about the webinar and up to date on what the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC is doing is by subscribing to the newsletter on the website orcbc.ca. With that, I will end the webinar. Thank you very much for being here today, and thanks again to all of our panelists. Have a great afternoon.